is that this is a generation that's totally sexually dysfunctional, I think, because of pornography. And some people are able to cope.
No, the reason this generation is sexually dysfunctional, women don't need sex as much because of social media. Again, it's so crazy that this is like, I would argue that Nick is one of the most red pill people on the right when it comes to women. And still, he's blaming corn, but he's not blaming social media. It's right in front of their faces. Women don't have as much of a need for sex because we get attention from high-level men on social media, at work. We don't even have to leave our house to get that attention that we need, right? Attention is a need for women. Sex is a need for men. So social media for women is 10 times worse than corn is for men. So now when you have women, watching the Chads on their phone, watching the Chads on TV, thinking we deserve all that, what happened? What is the next step? Well, we start banging 20% of men. We're like, we want the Chads on the TV. And what's different in 2025 is we can actually get the Chads on the TV. You can actually bang your celebrity crush. That's an attainable thing for women nowadays. That has not always been attainable in the past. So what happens next? Now there's a chunk of men that are not selected. The men that are not selected, what are they supposed to do? And because conservatives do not treat sex as a need for men, they don't treat it as a need. None of them. We can't have a realistic conversation about what are we going to do with the men that are not getting selected by women for sex. A realistic conversation. Are we going to have forced marriages again? No, that's not realistic. What in the next 90 days can we do to figure out what are those men supposed to do? That's why the red pill is the only place that has real answers. Because what the red pill has is it has guys that tried, okay, I did online dating. That solved my sexual problem. I got laid. I tried this. I tried that. I tried that. None of these other movements have that. None of them. Not Nick's movement, not the Daily Wire, none of them. None of them are actually solving the problem. The red pill guys are the only ones solving the problem. So yeah, and their answers are so stupid. Like, and I hate to talk this. I hate to be this mean about it, but in all honesty, you're an idiot if you think that men aren't going to watch corn or get laid. Give them a wife. They go to the church. There's no wives. Okay, what now? Be a monk. Yeah, okay. And then you ask them, well, were you celibate? Were you a monk? Did you watch corn? And they're like, well, no. What? And then it just is this cycle of no answers. Are we going to force the women to get married? Are we going to force them to sleep with men they're not attracted to? They're like, no. Well, can the men at least get laid so they can be attractive to women? Can they start banging some women to, and then they're like, well, they can't do that either. And it's just so unpragmatic. Like if the content creators aren't giving you like a step-by-step plan of like what you're supposed to do, they don't have an answer. And I'm not pretending I have an answer when it comes to men getting laid, but I hate that they demonize the guys. They demonize the guys that give you an answer. Because all the other content creators do is just nag. They nag on men's sexuality.
With it. Some people don't have a problem, but I think a lot of people.
Did you see that Nick called you the goat of rage bait on his show? I did see that. Look, I'm a fan of Nick. I think that he misses the mark on this topic. I think he's way better than most conservatives, but still, when I'm listening to him talk about this topic, it's still gynocentric here.
And maybe even a small minority have a serious problem with it. And
how does it make people sexually dysfunctional?
I think that it's impossible for a real woman to compete with the availability and the novelty of pornography.
And I disagree. I don't think it's the same. I think most men that are watching corn, they would take a real woman. And the other thing they're not talking about is the biggest group of incels is actually married men. The number one OnlyFans consumers are married white Christian men. And there's always a hope coming back from this. They say, well, that sample size of that study, it just wasn't good enough. It's just people that hate Christians. I'm like, no, because the Christian women are naturally going to be the most controlling because they controlled the relationship from the jump because the sex happened on her terms, not his. Yeah, we'd prefer a real woman, but that's not pragmatic. A lot of men, they don't have time to court these women or to learn, seduction skills. These are skills. Corn will wreck your marriage bed. Well, what started, right? What started the wrecking of the marriage bed? Was it the man watching corn or the woman getting fat or not sleeping with her husband? Let's be real here. Every girl I know that got married first year, 20 pounds. On average, women gain 20 pounds in the first 5 years of marriage.
A real woman, like without getting graphic, she's only one person. And
from a young age, I told myself I wouldn't be caught dead in a toxic or abusive relationship.
One guy in the chat says, David says, my laptop doesn't accuse me of sexual assault because I cheated on her. I know these ads. Here.
Maybe she wants to do something sexual, maybe she doesn't. Porn is, you could have 100 different women in one sitting doing anything that whatever niche or idiosyncratic thing a person might be into, it's there. And so I think that novelty combined with that availability, it makes it so that, when you think about courting a woman, juice isn't worth the squeeze. And so there's like also a problem of like erectile dysfunction, people that can't enjoy regular sex because it does not compare to the intent.
There's a group of older men that had erectile dysfunction. And, so they created Viagra and they found that when they got young, hot, attractive women, that dysfunction went away. How many men would be dysfunctional if there was a 20-year-old baddie with big tits in front of them? How many?
Intensity, the novelty, and the availability of porn. It's hyper stimulation. And so I think that's sabotaging a lot of normal sexual relationships.
It seems like it's making a lot of people gay too.
Yeah. And trans.
You think that's true?
100%.
What is that?
I think that's kind of a dumb take. I understand what they'll do is they'll say, well, what about this study? Here's some study. There's evidence that suggests that like blah, 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 the person's trans, whatever. But, I've actually met trans people. I think they were always just off. Just my opinion. Can't force women to sleep with certain men. When the decline is continuing, it will happen. You will think women will fare well in a civil war or when the population crashes 75% 40 years from now. Look, I'm not saying it won't come eventually, but you cannot make decisions on your life today thinking that it will come in your lifetime. Odds are it's probably not going to come in your lifetime. And if you expect it to come in your lifetime, you are going to be waiting the rest of your life. I mean, I had an economist on here. He said that things might go back to tradition when I'm like 60. Okay, now that I'm almost dead, like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's people that were predicting this decline 50 years ago. I interviewed them. Now they're in their 70s and their 80s. Now they're almost dead.